Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. Apparently, the format with answering objections is quite popular, so I'm gonna continue it. But I want to do this episode about a more serious topic, a grave one. Yesterday, I saw a headline: Lithuania revises its constitution to allow the deployment of weapons of mass destruction on its territory. Today, I see a headline in the Romanian media. Top NATO general, Romanian NATO general, advocates for installing American nuclear weapons on the territory of Romania. And then I read that Poland is also considering it. Of course, the Baltics are eager beavers in this respect. Also, development from the Baltics yesterday. Estonia had the night before yesterday an air alarm all over its territory because Ukrainian drones were flying over it in order to attack St. Petersburg, because the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is taking place there these days. And Kaja Kallas, the former Estonian official who is now the foreign minister of the European Union, was openly rejoicing. She was happy that Russia has no response to it, that Russia can do nothing about the drones that are attacking St. Petersburg, flying over Estonian airspace. So I wanted to do this episode about the suicidal tendencies on the eastern flank. The eastern flank of NATO is made up of these countries. Now Finland is a new addition, whose political elites have been completely subverted by the United States through all sorts of mechanisms. In Romania, there was a lot of lawfare involved, but also this constant propaganda, 35 years of propaganda describing all sorts of Russian and Soviet atrocities so as to make the population of Eastern Europe regard the Russians as some sort of Mongol horde. Just as a side note, I received one objection that I will address. I will not make a separate video for it because I think it's a rather quick answer that I can give. I received the objection that if I cannot convince people of my position, then it means I am wrong. And it's very funny because it somehow takes as an assumption the fact that truth is immediately evident, even without prior knowledge, as if truth comes from the Holy Spirit or something like this. You hear it and you're instantly convinced by it. You can distinguish it. You hear, 10 sentences on a topic, you know nothing about that topic, and you immediately identify which one is true and which one is not. Of course, the world does not function this way. It's ridiculous to think that the world functions this way. If the world functioned this way, propaganda would not have been invented, and propaganda would not exist, and we would not have the term propaganda, which designates a reality that is not there. This also has the assumption that people are rational. No, people are not rational. We are driven by emotions, and if you put in a lot of hate and disgust into people, that hate and disgust bypasses the rational channels through which they derive conclusions. So, for example, right now, if you show people from Eastern Europe after 35 years of anti-Russian propaganda driven by the Americans through the education channels, media, all sorts of ways, now if you show them Ukrainian atrocities committed against Russia, they will not flinch. They will not... they will find some sort of justification for it. They will say it's fake. They will say it's the other way around. They have a way of justifying it, which is not rational. It's not like they came to the logical conclusion given the circumstances. No, they were presented with a new piece of information, a fact, such as the bombing of Starobilsk Technical Vocational College, the bombing of the dormitories. It was struck 3 times by Ukrainian drones. It wasn't like an accident because it was struck successively, and I don't know how many girls died. They were like 19 or something, and there's no reaction. If you tell somebody who is a rabid Russophobe and who has been indoctrinated by years upon years of hate and hate and hate and hate and disgust and hate and more disgust and more hate, they will be able to justify anything. If a nuclear bomb drops on the Kremlin tomorrow, the Russophobe will say they did it to themselves, or they had it coming, or something like this, So this is my reply to this, because this commentator said, well, you don't need Jeffrey Sachs and John Mersheimer to convince people that your position is correct. If your position were correct, people would have been already convinced. The moment you opened your mouth, people would just look at you and say, I see truth. But this is not how the world works. I've invested thousands of hours in this topic because I wanted to draw my own conclusion, to reach my own conclusion. And all of these facts that I have stored in my head regarding the whole history of the international system and the history of the European part of the international system and of the European architecture and the build-up to this conflict and American imperialism and all of these things, if you don't have them, then how can you recognize what's true and what's not regarding a sentence, a claim from this area? It's as if you took somebody from somebody who is completely ignorant of the Second World War, has not even heard of Hitler, and you present him statements like, there was this German dictator who killed millions of people and so on, and some other claims saying, well, he was controversial, but rather on the good side and whatever, and you would expect that person who knows absolutely nothing to identify the correct claim. Now, this is, of course, impossible. The majority of the people, not the majority, basically all the people that I could not convince had as knowledge, as what they regarded as knowledge on the topic, these decades of anti-Russian propaganda, claiming all sorts of atrocities, which if you start digging into them, you'll see that they are hard to document, but they were made very obvious by the Americans. Plus the fact that all sorts of positive things regarding them were hidden from the history books and were conveniently also hidden from the media and from the public discourse. And you had this Chinese drop of atrocity upon atrocity, only news that made people angry and disgusted, and the outcome is this, that once you say Russia, in the minds of the people, the pathway lights up, not that of rational processing, but that of, somebody eating corpses. It's like, disgusting. What are you saying about this topic? Please stop, you're making me nauseous. This is kind of the physiological reaction. So, of course, it's not because of my lack of understanding of the topic that I cannot convince people. It's because truth functions in a different way. You have to be mentally prepared to rationally process the piece of evidence and the logical chain and all of these things. But coming back to the nuclear weapons, so essentially the countries on the eastern flank of NATO, not surprisingly given what I've said about the dominant strategy of the United States of using these countries as proxies, just like it is doing in Asia against China. So these countries on the eastern flank are willing to commit suicide. It is not for nothing that the Cuban Missile Crisis took place. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, I think, or 1961, took place because the Soviet Union and the United States came too close to each other with nuclear missiles. The whole idea was to have deterrence, and in order to have deterrence, enough physical space had to be between one's country and the other's missiles, so that they have enough time to realize if they're being attacked. And after 1991, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the United States also pulled out of all of these treaties, the START Treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation, the Medium Range Deployment Treaty, anyway, all of these treaties which ensured that it would not get too close to the it would not get too close to Russia with its nuclear weapons, because if these missiles are deployed too close, there's no more reaction time. And the United States has officially a first strike nuclear doctrine. The United States does not limit itself in any way from using nuclear weapons first, even when it is not attacked. In the Russian nuclear doctrine, it says that Russia will only respond. But the United States takes upon itself this, this feature that it allows itself to strike first, essentially. So it strikes first any enemy that it deems threatening or whatever. So Russia knows this, of course, and this is why Russia did not allow the expansion of NATO. This is why Russia objected to the installation of the missile defense shield in Poland and Romania, but it is also capable of delivering ballistic missiles, as it was also admitted by a Romanian Minister of Defense a few years ago. So it also objected to these military installations, and of course it will not only object, but the installation of nuclear weapons in these eastern countries will, in my opinion, provoke all-out war. I mean, it will provoke a Russian invasion of these countries in order to prevent this outcome. The nuclear missile crisis of 1961 was a moment in history where we were very close to the annihilation of the human species. I don't know how the American propaganda now delivers this episode. Does it deliver it in the sense of we forced those Soviets to withdraw their missiles from Cuba? No, it was a mutual withdrawal. The United States withdrew their missiles from Turkey, which was deemed too close to the Soviet Union, and the Soviets withdrew them from Cuba. It was not a win by the United States. It was a win by humanity, because both sides withdrew their missiles from the borders of each other. Now this would be just like Russia and China installing nuclear missiles on the Mexican-American border and on the Canadian-American border. So it would be just like having Russia and China develop a military alliance with Canada and Mexico, and surrounding the United States with nuclear missiles targeting its cities. Would the United States allow this? No, of course not. The United States doesn't even allow China to have a military base in the Solomon Islands, somewhere in the Pacific, because it is deemed too close. It is in the Western Hemisphere, and the United States regards the entire of the Western Hemisphere to be its playground. It and only it has sovereignty over the Western Hemisphere. But the United States allows itself the privilege to install nuclear weapons in former Soviet republics, to install them on the border with Russia. Of course, American propaganda in these countries say, we are sovereign countries, we can do whatever we want. Sure, Mexico and Canada are also sovereign countries, but if they did this, they would be nuked before any missile would arrive from Moscow or Beijing. I mean, they would be nuked when they developed the idea, when they had the plan. They would be nuked preemptively, because the United States has this as a doctrine, and it nuked Japan just for resisting, without there being any danger to the American mainland at that point in the war in 1945. So basically, the countries of Eastern Europe are playing not a dangerous game. It would be a dangerous game if it were risky, but it's not risky anymore. Now there's no more risk, it's a certainty. So risk involves the possibility of danger ahead. I would say it's no longer a possibility. I mean, once the discussion went so far as to announce that they will install nuclear weapons, I think basically this is the last provocation that Russia will take before responding. So the announcement that these nuclear weapons will be installed will be the last drop, after which Russia will say, okay, obviously their plan is to attack us first. They also disabled some nuclear radars with the help of Ukrainian drones, having this plausible deniability that it was actually Ukraine, even though those radars, some of them were in Siberia or in the Far East. And these countries are being used by the United States very cynically, and with the help of this comprador elite and of the civil society that are just these unhinged, uneducated individuals who the United States Embassy pays in order to bark up propaganda. So yeah, we are headed for disaster. We are headed for war, and Russia is not saying it because probably the decision has already been made, and now they're putting together the details. But of course, Russia will not allow this. It is stupid to think that Russia would allow this. It's like thinking that the world's largest country, one of the world's biggest military powers, and definitely the world's largest nuclear power, so the country that has most nuclear weapons, would allow itself to just be defeated and conquered and struck and hit with nuclear weapons perhaps and dismembered and so on. I know that this is the end goal of the Western elites because they keep on saying it. So, for example, Kaja Kallas, before she became the foreign minister of the European Union, had this statement as an Estonian official saying that the Russians should be denationalized after being conquered, so that they forget that they were once great, that they should forget about military ambitions and so on. So in the minds of the Western elites, there is this plan to conquer Russia one way or another. Of course, they do not put it in these terms because when Russia accuses them of this, they say this is Russian propaganda. So they do not repeat the exact talking points. They just say all the things that build up to that conclusion without saying that the point is to invade Russia once again, to do Operation Barbaros and so on. But essentially, this was the role of NATO expansion, to use these countries as a bulwark against Russia, and now this plan is coming to fruition. What can I say? And the elites of these countries are completely oblivious to what they're doing. For example, this general in the Romanian media was openly rejoicing, this Romanian general was openly rejoicing the fact that this will piss off the Russians. The Russians will be very, very pissed off and they will issue threats, which we, of course, have to ignore. So therefore, it's a win for us, We pissed off the Russians really badly. Okay, super, but isn't there some sort of breaking point? I mean, everything in nature has a breaking point. It doesn't matter how strong it is. At some point, if you apply enough pressure, it will crack. I assume that Russia is no different, and if Russia showed restraint and it did not answer and so on, it is either because it was trying to get some reason into its Western counterparts, or that it is planning this response and it is planning all the contingencies around it. So it has to pretend to feign weakness until the point when it will be when it will have everything in place in order to respond. But this delusion in the minds of the Western elites and of the Western propaganda machine that you can just beat up the bear with the stick and the bear will never respond, this is just madness. And this is the level where we are at. The reason why I'm not doing this in Romanian is because I don't think there's a way of coming back from this in the specific case of the country of Romania. So I'm doing this in English to reflect upon it, perhaps with people living in Western Europe who are preoccupied by this matter as well. But in terms of trying to stop it in the individual countries, I don't see how. So when you have Lithuanian officials openly bragging that they will allow weapons of mass destruction on their territory and they will change the constitution to do that. I don't know, weapons of mass destruction used to have a negative connotation, right? It was the allegation waged against Saddam and against Iraq in 2003 as a reason for invasion, right? I mean, Iraq was invaded by the Americans, which are half a world away, because they had weapons of mass destruction. What do you think would happen to the Baltic countries if they had weapons of mass destruction? I mean, the United States felt threatened by Iraq having weapons of mass destruction half a planet away. Do you think Russia will feel threatened by Lithuania having weapons of mass destruction on its border? After Lithuania 2 weeks ago openly asked NATO to attack Kaliningrad, to show the Russians that they can take Kaliningrad fortress. So yeah, this suicidal game is being played. It is not openly acknowledged. If you say that it's a dangerous game, you're just ventilating Russian propaganda. And these countries are going straight to the slaughterhouse. On the one hand, being very open about it, and on the other hand, saying that any reaction that might come from Russia to designate them as participants into the war, in the case of Estonia, or to somehow preemptively attack them because they will install nuclear weapons, to claim that these would be unprovoked. So probably the first reaction that Russia will have against these countries will be labeled as if it came out of nowhere, as if these countries are completely peaceful towards Russia, completely cooperative, and had no hostile intentions. And all of a sudden, Russia decided to attack them because Russia is evil, and this is what Russia does to countries, just out of the blue and without provocation. The whole story of illegal and unprovoked will be lit up again. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. I will come back to responding to the objections of the user that sent me this huge list yesterday. I will make separate episodes for each of them because there's a lot to unpack in each. And if you like what I do, like, share, subscribe. If you want to support me financially, you'll find the link in the channel description. And until next time, take care.